the reason that I wanted to fast track this is because the list launches books. We like to be first. You should think of us, everybody who's launching a book should think of the list as your influencer team, right? Yes, you want to sell books and reach the women of the list, but you really want to reach the friends and influencers and circles of the women of the list. And so I am sorry that your book is launching at a weird time. I feel bad for you.
But you know what? This is the thing about fair play and unicorn space. These are intractable problems, right? These messages don't go away. So the way I look at it is I remember when I decided not to run for office, Anne, because I was the president of LS&A in Michigan. I was like, this is the worst job ever. I'm having to like pander to your constituents when you want to say real things. So I decided that it's like a political campaign. I mean, that's how fair play was. It started with convincing one editor at a time to take a chance on this book about chores and housework, where people thought that was irrelevant, and that women were doing great. We're more in the workforce than men. And, what are you talking about? Women have more college degrees than men. And why would anybody be interested in a book about chores and housework, right? That was the response I got in 2017. So it's a political campaign. And that's how I look at this. This is just a 101. And I really appreciate you all being here at the holiday time. And then just to continue these conversations on the list and hopefully in person in the new year.
It feels like, and as I was reading the book, it felt like, okay, I don't have the mental space to do this work right now, but I'm happy I know about it now, so I can make the mental space. Mm-hmm. Okay, hold on. I'm going to pin you just so that spotlight you, I think is the right thing to do. And then I'm going to add my spotlight so we're there for everybody. Jen, can I give you access to share the screen? Yes, I'm going to make Jen a co-host. Yes, make you.
Thank you, Natalia, for saying that. The pandemic has impacted so many of us, prompting reflection. In addition to the Great Resignation, the unicorn. Yes, I think this could not be a better time. There's another great book coming out, Catherine Price's book, The Power of Fun. What I love when books come out at the same time that have similar themes, is that you never want a book coming out with a similar theme that says something the opposite of what you're saying. You want to know that the data is saying what you're saying. And the truth is, while the most important question I've asked, and, over a course of a decade, is how did mustard get in your refrigerator? That was the most important question I ever asked, because that led me to the fair play system to overcome the resistance when I said, well, who both holds the calendar? Who both gets groceries? And it was like, well, we both do. So how did mustard get in your refrigerator was a way to get to understanding the cognitive labor was falling on women and hetero cisgender relationships. That question, the second most important question I asked over 10 years was, what makes you you? And how do you share with the world? And even some of the most powerful women I know said to me things like, I don't know, shopping. I was like, no, not that, but the opposite. And so it really got me understanding that if we really want to understand burnout, the hard part was, if we give women time back, this understanding that reclaiming our time, that our time is diamonds like men, it's not sand. But, if it's our most valuable currency, time is our most valuable currency. We've been conditioned to give it away to everybody else besides ourselves since we've been born. But even if you get that time back, I had so many women say to me, well, what would I even do with it? I'm a parent and a partner and a professional on my 3 Ps. I have no space for anything that makes me come alive. And so the 2 most important words I heard in my data were that women were feeling a combination of overwhelm plus boredom. And I thought,
when did you do your research? When did you do the research? Before the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I started in 2011. Thank you, Spaces. Yeah, we'll talk about space.
Great word.
And actually why I called it Unicorn Space, Laura. I'd love to talk about that. But yeah, So I started this research in 2011 when I had my blueberries breakdown, which I write about in Fair Play when Seth sent me the text, "I'm surprised you didn't get blueberries." And I thought my marriage was ending over being the fulfiller of his smoothie needs. That was the beginning of this journey. But it continued and iterated, just like any sociologist. I'm not a sociologist by trade, I'm a lawyer, but my mother's a sociologist and I'm trained in economics and anthropology. And what we know is it's helpful to ask the same questions over and over again, so that when you get to a saturation point, when you can literally predict what someone's going to say, you know you're onto something. And this idea of, again, I like to go dark to go light, but I can just sum it up in saying there's a lot of interesting things that happen to us, especially after we become mothers, or even if we're assumed that we'll become mothers. This applies to all women's economic security, regardless of our family structure. And even if we're not married to hetero cisgender men. But I remember, Anne, for me, the first iteration that I knew this would be the sequel was in the back of my mind when I remembered that all three of my kids, when they were brought to me in the hospital, I had been told, right, that, women are freed, but we don't realize that mothers are constrained. So I remember getting my child handed to me in the hospital, my first child, and the nurse said, "Hi, Mom." And that was the day that I started to think about the power of naming and how I lost my name from that day forward. That week I got a necklace. Do you remember those necklaces? They were all those little circles. I got a charm that said Mom, and I dutifully put that on my kids' initials. Didn't really take that off until I got to preschool, started thinking about these issues again, and where I sat in a group of primary parents, which I hate that word, all women, plus a couple of gay dads. And our preschool teacher looked at all of us and said, "These are going to be your best friends for the rest of your life. Look around," because it was till 6th grade. We're in the school. These people will know you better than anybody will ever know you. And I looked down at my name tag, and my name tag said Zach's mom. So I remember thinking to myself, really? These people are going to know me better than anyone's ever going to know me? They don't even know my fucking name. And so it took a long time to the symbolic understanding of what it means to be defined by our roles in society. And the community of women, we will all have been defined by our roles at one point. And breaking out of that is really what this book is about.
I think that's so powerful because it's not just defined by your roles, but like very narrowly, right? There's a lot of shoulds that come along with the ways that you should be a mother, or the ways you should be a wife, or the ways you should be a woman. So 2011 is when you started doing this research, but 2017, is that right? When this came out? When did 2019 is when this came out. And so I love the blueberry story in Fair Play. Is there the same story for you for Unicorn Space? What's the blueberry story of Unicorn Space?
Well, it's a good question. I think the story was probably Ellen, who was one of my clients, because my day job is I'm a philanthropic advisor. I work for families that look like the HBO show Succession, right? And you should all feel bad for me. It is that type of work. But I remember when I didn't understand these issues like I do now, I was still in the very white feminist space of believing that if you had help, that all your problems could be solved, right? That had been a message I had heard, right? That, well, you just have to if you're so overwhelmed, just get help. But now I realize how highly problematic that is to say, well, my ascendancy will be on the backs of the undervalued labor of women of color. So it was understanding that when I didn't know that yet, I asked my client, Ellen, what happened to you? Because I knew she was married to this patriarch that was one of my clients, and she was his ex-wife. And she said to me, because they had a contentious divorce and she had been this really amazing interior designer. She was the first in her family to go to college for art and design. And I said to her, why did, help? Like, why didn't you keep your career? And she looked at me, like you said, Anne, about the roles, the narrow way we're supposed to be. And she said, well, I lost my permission to be interesting. I thought that was a very provocative way to describe. And I wrote that down. And I remember feeling, wow, the permission to be interesting, the permission to be interested in our own lives. And I realized that as we go through and I start to understand the research around existential identity loss into extrinsic milestones, the true antidote to burnout, capitalist patriarchy wants to tell us it's commodified wellness, like going to the salon to get a haircut or to take a walk around the block. But really the true antidote to burnout is the ability to be interested in our own lives. And that requires sustained attention. And the hardest part is that there is a crisis for women of interruption. There is no space, back to the space. There is no space for women to not live in a crisis of interruption. The pandemic has only made it worse, but my data before the pandemic showed that women were interrupted twice as much as our male counterparts. I called 50 schools, Anne, 50 schools for fair play. And I asked, why do you call women when your kid is sick? And it was always, well, we don't want to interrupt the man's time, right? So we guard men's time, whereas we treat women's time as if it's infinite. And that's the core crux of all my work, whether it's fair play or unicorn space. The understanding that if women enter a male profession, the salaries go down. That we say things to women like breastfeeding is free when it's 1,800 hours a year. It's a full-time job. So when we're taught since birth to give our time away, we do it. We become complicit in our own oppression. And so many women said, really, you want me to add to my to-do list, finding, creative space? And I'd say, yes, because taking things off is not the antidote to burnout. Like adding that interest in our lives is. And so I think that's what my story was listening to Ellen and how provocative it was for me to understand that we can lose interest in our own lives in the fair play cards, in the perfection of all the fair play, what I look at in the terms of the gender division of labor.
But when you talk about that losing interest in our own lives, losing feels like, is it neglect, right? Or is it nobody else seems that interested in me doing anything except for the stuff that I'm supposed to do, so I'm less interested, I want the approval? Like how do you lose it, right? What is the system for losing it that we can start at the beginning and say, how can we nurture it before we lose it, or even be aware of it?
Well, I think that's why, Unicorn Space and Fair Play always are triggering books, because I can't be Cal Newport as much as I love him and I sit on panels on deep work. I can't be Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who writes just about creativity, because if I did that, it would not honor the lived experience of women, to just jump into a plan. I wish that Fair Play could have just been a card game, right? But we're unpacking over 100 years of conditioning here. So this is a 101. But what I'd say, what happens to us? Well, I wrote about this in a commencement speech for Lesley College. And as I like to go dark to go light, the speech is called, "You Only Have 10 Years Left to Live." Because what happens as we liberate women but constrain mothers is that everybody, as I said earlier, anybody in that space, we start seeing everything fall apart for women around 31. And of course, the more privileged, maybe the easier it is to have tools to combat it. But it really is it's across socioeconomic spectrums. What happens is we've exhausted, Anne, all of our tools to fight for our ability to stay interesting, to fight for our ability to use our degrees. But what starts pushing back at us is that, and Claudia Golden, a great economist, talks about this a lot, promotions have moved later. So the biggest promotions used to be in our 20s. Now they're really in the, you turn partner in sort of more your late 30s or mid 30s. So we can't have our kid before that promotion. It's budding up right at that time. And then what starts happening is we use tools. We're like, okay, we can solve this problem. We have birth control. That helped. That was the last, generation. Okay, now we have scientific ways of preserving our fertility later and later. But there's how many fucking tools do we need just for the ability to exist? Just for the ability to exist. We can't do this on our own. Yes, there's rain, of course, right? Life is not waiting for the storm to pass. As Vivian Green's quote I love, it's learning to dance in the rain, but we're drowning in the rain. Yes. Because we think that we are having to solve this problem for ourselves. It's the most lonely and isolating time, midlife. And so I had to address that, I felt, whether people like that or not, before I could jump into the program, because there really is a program. I interviewed over 750 creatives who said that they were able to feel interested in their own lives. And there was 3 things but before that, I will say the 3 things that were the hurdles. The biggest hurdles were time. That I don't have a permission to be unavailable from my roles as a parent, partner, and or professional. There's literally no time left. The other biggest hurdle was guilt and shame. I call it domestic encroachment. You carve out that hour to play piano. Oh my God, I might as well pick up Ben from school. It's just piano. It's a waste of time, or it's not that important. And then the third is the permission to use our voice to ask for what we need. Because as we've been conditioned to be seen, not heard, not to be loud, definitely not loud and wrong. We often wait to ask for what we need until it's way later than when we needed it. But the idea is the space to ideate and dream when it's not paid, it doesn't go over so well to our friends, our families, our colleagues, our partners.
Well, I think that was one of the things that I thought was particularly resonant to me was this idea of it breeds resentment in partnerships when someone claims their time and someone does not, right? Maybe the other person does, but for women in particular, you were making the point that why do you deserve? What do you mean? This is like, are you contributing? Is it valuable? Is this creating value? And I thought that was not only the feeling you said of your own guilt, but that, like, let's say you claim your space and you've got to deal with everybody else's feelings about you claiming your space.
That's the hardest part. I think the hardest part for me, when I realized I needed a lack of interruption, that was going to be my resistance. When I said to Seth, the lack of interruption is my resistance to the patriarchy and the roles that I've been in. And he understood that. I wanted the curiosity, which we'll talk about. The beauty of this system is the 3 C's. So this is the fun part, because we're going to play a game too. But the fun part of Unicorn Space is understanding there is a way forward. Unicorn Space, thank you for acknowledging that you like the word space, or the word space is important. But I remember a lot of people would use the word white space, and then I'd actually talk to my Black friends who said, I don't like the word white space. I need white space to think, because white spaces for them were spaces that they're not allowed in. And as a Jew, that felt pretty resonant. So I was like, well, I don't really like the word white space anymore. Space itself is a great word, but I really wanted to convey this idea that it's necessary, that it's magical. It's linked to our mental and physical health when we claim our space. And the idea of a unicorn was so great because it's not like a rabbit or a horse. It's literally a mythical figure that doesn't fucking exist. Doesn't exist. So unicorn space doesn't exist unless we claim it, right? So I thought that was an interesting metaphor. And that is sort of the way around the naming of a hobby, vanity project, passion project, things that seem so trivial when this is actually essential to our mental and physical health.
It's one of the things before we play the game, or maybe this is what the game is about, but I was thinking like, what is my unicorn space? And I was like, okay, I don't have hobbies.
But you'll never use that word again.
No, I don't know.
It
Seems so right. It seems so trivial, but I really like had a hard time identifying my own space, right? Like, what is my unicorn space? And I wonder if everybody on this, like, if I just say to you before you've read the book, everybody on this call, like, do you think you know what your unicorn space is or your unicorn power? Can you just click to raise your hand if you are somebody who feels that way, that you have a unicorn space? Give me a little like.
Yes, Alex, what is yours?
Now I feel terrible. My unicorn space was, I guess in some sense, an individuality. And then I really do believe I have something to say. Not everybody might want to hear it, but, I get a lot of resentment for being specific, and that gets confused with being controlling, which is really very different. So it's a constant fight, but I really do feel like I am different and in my own senses, wacky little unicorn. So really, but it's hard to do that.
But that is it. Whether it's writing a book, right? Because I felt the same way, Alex. Like my unicorn space was having something to say. It was being curious about the gendered division of labor, and really the beauty of the idea of unicorn space. It's really three things combined. So the hardest part to understand is that it really is not self-care, as I said earlier, or adult friendships, which are important, but those are the baseline. Like if we don't even have those, I mean, we're so fucking screwed, we have to have some friends. We have to combat loneliness through some version of self-care, but it's more than that. It's the idea that for me, eating pies during the pandemic was definitely probably my self-care, but baking a pie triggers a different thing to mental health. Listening to a podcast, self-care, creating a podcast, unicorn space. The active pursuits are triggering something that are what we don't often talk about. They're triggering, and this is what the science shows, because I spent a lot of time in the happiness labs. And we're going to do that. We're going to do a fun exercise to help you get inspired, not to find your ultimate unicorn space. It doesn't have to be that much pressure, but the idea to get curious. That's the first C, values-based curiosity, not the curiosity, as my friend said, over scrolling her friend's Venmo transactions. Real curiosity based on your values. But, to even get to that space, it requires some courage, and it requires, understanding that a lot of the times when I said to Seth, I want to spend Sundays writing, as Alex said, I want to use my voice, that I'm not sure where it's going to go. I don't have a published book deal. It's not my career. It was the world around me that was so confused. People would say to me, well, your husband's going to leave you because you don't see him during the week and you don't see him on the weekends. And your kids are okay that you're never around. I mean, just really crazy things 10 years ago that I was hearing, that I'm hoping we wouldn't maybe hear today because we have places like TheLi.st. But I will say 10 years ago, I didn't feel that type of support. So what is unicorn space? As we said, it's this intersection between meaning and happiness. Sitting in the happiness lab, spoiler alert, I learned that when you pursue happiness, you become more sad. Even the best happiness scholars like Laurie Santos will tell you that. Happiness has a place in the world for your kids and for you, but please don't say, I want you to be happy. What you want to say is, I want happiness to be your clue. Just like jealousy is. I talked to Robin Arzon for this book. She's a good friend. And she talked about happiness when she was running was a clue. But also her big clue was another feeling of jealousy. Anytime she would run with a partner who had devoted their lives to fitness, she felt super extraordinarily jealous. Not of that woman, because again, we're all here to say like, we want to support each other, but saying, well, what does that say about me? Same thing with partnership. If you feel resentful of your partner's marathons, triathlons, golf, whatever it is, even in non-hetero relationships, this comes up. It's probably because you're not claiming the same space for yourself. That's all about fair play. So, you can read that if you need help with claiming that space back. But let's go into the 3 C's because this is the game. So values-based curiosity, I think, Anne. So I would say to you that I'm going to assume your unicorn space one of them is your job. I will have to say that, right? You are.
Oh, wait, can your unicorn space can be your job?
It can be your job.
Because
absolutely.
I love my job. Like exactly. I love it. I'm created it.
It's your job.
I created it for me. I love it. And if I had free time, that's what I would do.
Exactly. So that's it. So if you have a job where you continue to do it, even if it wasn't where your main motivation isn't pay, then yes, it's probably your job. That's why I wanted to say that to you, that I see you in your full power. I see you. And so I believe it's your job. For me, fair play, gender division of labor, my avocation has become my vocation, but now it's a little burning out. So I had to find another unicorn space, which is I've decided to go back to hip hop dance because, as many of you may not know, I wanted to be a Nick City dancer. I actually tried out, got cut in the first round, but I at least was there. At least got there to try. Okay. So with our last 15 minutes that we have, I thought it could be fun to introduce, this is a prototype. So it'll be fun to get your feedback, but the same way that we created cards to go along with a book, which no one had ever done before, and they were all confused by what I meant by that, we created these inspired cards. So one of the fun things about the formula of unicorn space, which is values-based curiosity plus connection plus completion, which is why, Anne, I said your job is probably your unicorn space. You have all three of those factors in your job. But for others, we often don't, or we burn out, so we need another one. In those, the curiosity, the inspiration that so many women told me they had was a remix of ideas. It was taking something that they loved and then having their friends or their spiritual friends help them remix. So I thought it would be fun if anybody wanted to volunteer to be our uni for this game. And then we're all going to support you. So can anybody raise your hand or else I'm going to call on you? Okay. Alex, you raise your hand first. So we'll go with you.
Whatever you need me.
Okay, great. Okay. So this is how it works. So you're going to see a PowerPoint presentation of all the cards since we don't have them for you. But we would love to send them to you. So you're going to see a PowerPoint presentation of all the cards. 50 cards. I want you to pick one that resonates with you right now, something that feels inspirational when you see it. You don't have to take too long to think about it. And then as her spiritual friends, we're going to play a Cards Against Humanity game to get Alex inspired. Okay, so we're going to show you the cards. So look at them. We're having Alex look at them first. So take like 2 minutes to look at them.
I need my glasses to see these.
I know.
It's just the one page, right?
No, there's more. Okay, Keep going. Okay, next. Okay, next. Next. Okay, Alex, do you have a card that is resonating with you?
I have to say I went for just immediate, response. And it's such a wacky one.
Immediate.
Yeah. The tent with the open doors for whatever reason just clicked in.
Let's go back to that one, Jen.
I have no idea why, but I went with first looks.
Okay, so you were attracted to outdoors, hiking, camping, survivalist.
I'm not, but that's
but that's what you were attracted. Again, this is about inspiration because we're going to give you ideas. So this is what we're happening now. So I want every one of us to take another card and we need to combine it with outdoors for Alex, to give her ideas of something she can do in the new year that feels inspiring and fun to you? Okay, go to the next one, just so we all remember. Okay, next one. Okay, next one. Okay, does anybody have an idea of a card to mix with outdoors that could be interesting for Alex?
So I know Alex a little.
Yeah, because I have one. I have a good one, but you go first. Yes.
Well, it's funny, as I was looking at the cards trying to think of Alex, and the first one I looked at is beauty on the I think it's on the next page. And that's because it's not exactly Alex's job to focus on beauty, but I know that she loves it. And her social media is filled with gorgeous beauty products, and I just know she loves it. And frankly, she actually gifts me some beauty sometimes, which is very nice to have Alex as a friend with a big beauty closet. So in any case, that was my card that I thought of for her because I know she loves it.
So then what I would do with those, right? So Anne found a card. So then it's the idea of how do you combine those two? So the way I would look at it is, Alex, I'm going to ask you to commit this year to looking for outdoor beauty and sharing it with the world. So whether it's taking photos of beautiful things outdoors or taking walks where you're looking for things that feel beautiful to you, journaling them, putting them on Twitter. Actually, that's what, ironically, Ellen McGirt, who's a good friend of mine, she combined beauty in her unicorn space with art, beauty and art. And it became, and actually it could be outdoors too, but those were her two cards. And she started to learn to draw water drops. And every day she shares her water drops on Twitter. And she's created this water drop community of other people who also draw water drops, because her metaphor was, when you draw a water drop, it's actually more light than dark. It's just a little shading. And that was the message she wanted to give people during the pandemic. So we've combined beauty. That's one idea. So you're going to pick the idea that you like the best, or not the best, but one that so that's one. Anne's idea is the combining of beauty with outdoors. Is there anybody else that wants to combine a card for Alex? Anna?
I looked at, first it was the art, but then you said art. So the camera.
Oh, I love it. So yeah, can you put the camera with outdoors again, as we said, to capture that beauty? I think that's such a really fun combination. So I'm going to combine my remix for you idea is foraging. I saw the foraging card and I thought it could be really fun, possibly to do something outdoors. That's not just being outdoors, but maybe if you look at, I was just Googling it, there's like a top 5 places to forage in your community. There's all these lists. So could you go out and make something beautiful by collecting in the outdoors things that you can either forage for mementos or for food? Any other combinations? So Alex, okay. So did any of those things resonate with you?
I think the last 18 months have been so, I've been in the same apartment for 18 months. So I do get it. And I think my desire for some more connection to nature, I haven't really found it, but I've pushed myself obviously to go outdoors more than I have wanted to. But I think it's an interesting concept to go, and I would, as an overachiever, I would like to try to bring all of them together. So I will do something with beauty and the camera and the foraging, and I will figure it out. But yes, I will absolutely add that to my list of goals for next year.
And share it with us, right?
Yeah.
That it would be so fun to see what your outdoor beauty looked like for all of us, especially in a year when outdoors was a luxury, like you said, right? That reclaiming. And so this I know we don't have that much time left, but I wanted to say, like, the idea, the space to ideate, to dream, it doesn't have to be your ultimate leveling up. I talked to Sandy Zimmerman. She was one of my favorite interviews. She's a PE teacher who was the oldest mom to ring the red buzzer on American Ninja Warrior. And what she said when she went from PE teacher to basically a star on this show was that she had no expertise in parkour, which is the sport, was that she had this inkling, this thing, this delicate dream, she called it. And I think for women, so many of our dreams are delicate. And that's why the list is so important, right? Sharing your dreams with the right people, those spiritual friends, are the key to realizing them, whether it's foraging outdoors and Alex getting to share that with the list, or really understanding and uncovering some of those dreams that may be delicate. And what her point was, is that it is important to be careful and discerning with who you share them, because not everybody can understand and realize and help you realize your dreams. And sometimes understanding that history of friendships is not the same as spiritual friendships, which is a lot of the key to unicorn space success, is a really important distinction. And so that's why I always say the list is a great place for that, because there are people there that will help you foster your delicate dreams.
I love that. And I'm brought back to some of those conversations we had where sometimes the people who are closest to you are the most dismissive of your dreams and of your success. I think that thread really broke my heart, but also I saw the importance for us to be able to talk about that, right? That sometimes the people who are the closest to you are the least supportive. Before we wrap up and move on, and everybody goes and buys your books, gifts your book, puts your book on social media, there's one piece that's really important for us to talk about, because you've been such a champion for helping women working women out of the crisis of burnout. Muting you, Shoshana. The crisis of burnout, the crisis of losing your job, the crisis of losing your confidence, the crisis of losing your space, the crisis of losing care for your children. And I don't know if everybody here knows about the work you do with Care Force, but would you talk for a second about what you do with Care Force and the intersection of how Unicorn Space really addresses that crisis?
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do that. Yes. And I'd love to keep sharing that more as we grow next year. But I think the way I've always approached this type of work, any work that's intractable, or, it's a long road ahead and as a political and cultural movement, is to understand that we can't stop breathing, even though the air is polluted. And, if we stop breathing, we're going to die. So Fair Play and Unicorn Space are ways to take agency in our own life. But I would be remiss if I ever wrote those and didn't understand the broader context of what it feels like to breathe polluted air. And so that grace, that social safety net that other countries have that we don't, is the return to care. I believe that it all starts there. I believe that the only thing that matters to women's economic security is men doing childcare and housework. And I know that that's the case, because everything that sets us back, whether it's being forced out of traditional positions in the workplace, whether it's our time being valued as nothing, comes down to this idea that women are the assumption that our society is going to be built on the backs of the unpaid labor of women. That has been the dirty little secret that has allowed capitalist patriarchy to run its engines. And if we said our work is actually valuable and we're not going to do it anymore for free, then the entire idea of capitalism would collapse. And so the only way to get an understanding of doing things differently within a capitalist patriarchy, which is not going away anywhere, is to have men do childcare and housework. Absolutely. And of course, this affects Black women the most, because Black femmes are 85% primary breadwinners in their house. And yet they're dealing with a pay gap that is primarily 75% of the pay gap is the bias against mothers. So how do you get out from that vicious cycle? The way we get out is Care Force. The way we get out is starting to bring a community together of academics, activists who've been working on these issues, whether it's iGenPoo, from Caring Across Generations and National Domestic Workers Association, to Brencia Berry, who now is at the DNC, but was working for paid leave for All Forever, for Plus, actually, the other organization. We have to come together to understand that this is the fight of our lifetime. And if we had valued women's economic security through understanding men would do care and childcare and housework, we wouldn't have Roe be taken away from us. We wouldn't, because actually men would say, shit, what's going to happen to that child when it actually comes into the world? I actually think about those things. And men don't now. They don't think about those things. Some individual men do, but we know on average men, work-life balance in the latest McKinsey survey was not even in the top 10 of concerns for men. So I know we're talking to women here, so the good news is Paul Sullivan from the New York Times just started a company of dads. There are a lot of amazing men who are allies who've come into the Care Force. We are building. If you are someone who's devoted your life to women's economic security and you would like to be in the Slack channel, I'd love to have you there.
I haven't joined a lot, but every time I've joined those conversations, I find them meaningful and impactful. And I don't understand why, I don't understand why 18 months into the pandemic, we're still calling this a crisis for working mothers.
Yeah.
I want it to, this is a crisis for people, right? It's a crisis for all people. The solutions and the women who you've brought together, the stakeholders you've brought together are really incredibly impressive. And the conversations you're having are very advanced. So thank you.
Yes, AKA
thank you for all you do, but thank
nerdy.
you for that too.
But yes, and I will say that I remember, not that I don't love celebrity philanthropy, but I had a couple of celebrities who sort of wanted to get into the paid leave discussion, and their people called and said, we'd love if you'd amplify her messages or his messages. And I said, you know what? It's actually that you're amplifying the messages of people who've been doing this work for 30 years, right? And they're often leaders of color. So we also have to, reframe who's centered in these conversations. And so my goal is, just as a facilitator, it is to center the people who have been doing this work and to put my money where my mouth is. That's another thing. We're starting the Fair Play Policy Institute this year to put our money where our mouth is in terms of grant making to organizations that we believe are doing the best work on these intractable issues.
So give us marching orders. What are the three? What is the one thing? We're all gonna promote the book. We're all gonna buy, share, put it on social. What's the other one thing that you want everybody on this call to do?
I want us, really, honestly, it's to continue to stay inspired with each other and to continue to inspire others to find their own unicorn space. If you hear somebody saying, I don't have the time for things that make me come alive, if you see friends who can't drink a glass of water, as Ann and I were talking about before this call, I had a friend who's a nutrition coach who said her client won't drink a glass of water in the morning because she'll have to pee, and she's in the car for 2.5 hours transporting her kids to 2 different schools. That type of overwhelming burnout, we can be spiritual friends to intervene and to say that when we claim our own power, when we understand that the antidote to burnout is actually sustained attention for things that we love, supporting other women to do that as well is my definite wish for all of us in 2022. Fuck new you, new you, new year, new you. I just want new year, same you.
Right.
I want same you. I just want more of you, the non-interrupted version of you.
I love that. All right. I'm going to work on it for 2022. I wish
And
you success.
Anne, when your job is your unicorn space, remember the happiness trio is self-care, friendships, and your job. So though when you have a job that's your unicorn space, often the self-care and the friendships get ignored. So I will ask you to bring those back. Make sure that they are highlighted in your 2022 so that you don't burn out from your unicorn space.
You know, one of my closest and longest friendships, she is literally time starved, and I need her. I'm going to buy this book for her so that she can carve out some space, and then she and I can go have a drink. Like that's what we need. We can't even talk to each other. We just we barely see each other. So yes, I need my women to have their unicorn space so that we can get to the friendship connecting part.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're amazing. We are here for you and support you in your journey.
Thank you, Alex, for sharing your, for being our uni of the day.
Oh, my pleasure.
It'll be fun. I will send you all a copy of the cards because they're really fun. They're such a fun game to play over the holidays. And I'll send you a stack, but they're a great alternative to Cards Against Humanity.
I love it.
I just wrote you a note, but if there's something I can do at the Times to just sort of anything I can do, just write me back.
Thank you.
All right, good. Thank you, everybody. Look at that. You get 10 minutes back of your hour that you set aside. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.